Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. And I want to thank you for joining me, and you can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. And this podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, remove the stigma associated with addiction, and offer help and support to those suffering from addiction. I'd also like to just point out that this episode is brought to you by FHE Health, a substance abuse and mental health treatment center specializing in treatment for first responders' needs, including PTSD, anxiety, and substance use. So take the first steps to a better life today by visiting FHEHealth.com. And so today I want to bring to you a guest. This is a lady that I met through Dr. Rob Kelly, and a few episodes ago, I interviewed Dr. Rob Kelly, and he's based out of San Antonio, Texas. He is originally from the United Kingdom, and he's moved to the United States, and he does a lot of work. Please check out that podcast, because I think that you'll get a lot out of that. But Helen works with Dr. Rob, and she's going to talk a bit more about that. And through that connection, she was connected to me, and she contacted me and talked about some issues that are unique to folks that have had some brain injuries and strokes and things that have affected them. And that's not really something that I've talked about yet on this podcast. And I was so happy that Helen reached out to me, because that is so important to talk about. You know, in the treatment center that I work at right now, we run into patients that have, these unique issues. And Helen has just a ton of information to talk about regarding brain injuries. But in addition to that, Helen has incorporated some aspects to her recovery that we also have not talked about on this podcast, and that is coaching. Now, for those of just as a reminder, on this program, we talk about a lot of the different programs that are out there to help you, 12-step programs, whether it's AA, NA, GA, SA, all kinds of different programs, to include the family programs, Al-Anon, and all of the other Anons that support those programs. But there are a lot of different options, and I have said that on this program, and I always conclude by pointing out there are lots of different ways and different approaches and different things that you can do to support your program. And by the way, you don't have to just be a member of one program. You can be a member of multiple programs, and there's certainly benefit because each one brings its unique characteristics to the recovery effort. But Helen is going to be talking to us a bit about that. And Helen is from England. She's from the southwest of England. In fact, she is from Wales, England, and I have been to the southwestern part. I don't know that I've been to I know I haven't been to Wales, but I have been to Plymouth, and I've been to Portsmouth, and that pretty part of the country. One of the things I remember, Helen, is that it was really luscious and green, very, very green there. But then again, I'd been on a ship for 6+ months, so I think anything would have looked green to me, but very charming part of the world. And Helen, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Really, really looking forward to talking to you further about my passions. And I guess I should give you a bit more background for your listeners about me. I suffered a major stroke coming up to 8 years ago. Well, it's 7.5 years now. Completely out the blue. No family history or anything like that. Family were told absolutely no way I'd make it. And then after I was brought out of my coma, as I was coming round, they were warned that best case scenario, I'd be a complete vegetable or have locked-in syndrome. So they were braced for that, and with a lot of hard work and brilliant doctors, I am living independently with my 2 young children and living a life better than I've ever experienced before. And that's largely down to also getting rid of my addiction, which completely flourished and took a very aggressive hold after my stroke, because I wanted to numb the whole world out. My marriage had come to an end. My mother had terminal cancer, who I was living with, and I definitely had an alcohol use disorder prior to my stroke, but afterwards it worsened quite dramatically. And traumatic brain injuries are very complicated, and we all know addiction is very complicated as well. And I'm now seeing more and more people within the recovery world that do have other health concerns, and I'm in some forums online trying to give some support and hope to others in terms of recovering from a brain injury, which is a mammoth mountain to climb in itself. But then if you've tried to help yourself with substances, we're very fortunate here in the UK that we have good access to doctors and medication as we need it. We don't have health insurance. We pay through our taxes. But it's there for us 24/7, which is, from what I've learned, a lot harder, and for a lot of people, particularly in the States, other countries as well, I'm seeing it. And people trying to escape through whatever they can find. I've had some very interesting discussions, and to be honest, it's left me feeling quite terrified for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend. There's definitely a trend in that regard. You know, people, instead of pursuing recovery, and I know that you and I look at recovery as being abstinence from mood-altering substances, there's been quite the trend to try to find replacement substances.
Yep, replacing one for the other, as we know, is not very conducive at all. But I think people with disabilities, and yes, I've made a good enough recovery that I walk aided and occasionally have to use a wheelchair, but accessibility, and if any form of addiction does take hold, we tend to self-isolate. I definitely isolated. It's always had a tendency to do so, having mental health issues all my life as well. And obviously disability comes in many forms, but not just strokes, but even ill health and things. And if addictions have taken off, it's something that I think needs to be addressed. I started off in a 12-step recovery, but then found that I wanted to go a lot deeper. That's my inquisitive mind. And that's when I indeed, as you mentioned, started working with Dr. Rob Kelly Recovery Group. And that has just blown my recovery out of the water. I subsequently trained with him, wanting to help others. I now look to specialize to deal with those who are disabled, wanting to create their best life possible, as I have done with mine, and indeed helping addicts as well. And seeing the combination of the two come together is something that I feel I can offer across the world, especially working remotely, as I'm able to do so.
So when your stroke that you had, And you said that you were struggling with alcohol use disorder before the stroke, correct?
Correct. Many a time, my husband and I had extensive discussions about our drinking, but we didn't want to do anything about it.
Did your, how much did, in your particular case, if you know the answer to this, how much did your drinking prior contribute to the stroke? Do you know?
It didn't.
Okay.
The blood clot, the initial blood clot, they put down to the contraceptive pill. And after extensive investigation, it was discovered I had a hole in my heart. So the clot passed through this hole and shot straight up into my brain. And then I had a further bleed later on.
Okay.
Which was not expected.
So then you had the stroke, and then afterwards, and you had mentioned that you recognize now that you were suffering from an alcohol use disorder prior to that, and that's why I was asking that. But then after the stroke, which is obviously a traumatic event for you, that's when it really accelerated, correct?
It did. And I was put on antidepressants. They do it automatically in the hospital and the care I was under. And obviously the alcohol completely stopped those from working. And I was left as a very anxious, depressed individual. No hope in life. And it got so bad every time I drank, there was no enjoyment. I just wanted to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm. And I think the important lesson there, and it's a discussion that I know that I have with a lot of the patients that we work with, is that, if when you're taking medications for issues like, in your case, depression, drinking on top of the medication really negates the positive effects of that medication. And usually, and I don't know if this was true in your case, but in many cases, people aren't even telling their physicians that they're drinking on top of the medication. And so the doctors, as they're trying to dial in the correct amount, trying to determine how they're going to titrate the medication, it's difficult, if not impossible, for them to do so with a patient who's drinking.
When I came clean with my doctor,
Mm-hmm.
my drinking, because I was on quite a lot of other medication, and they turned around to me and said, "How are you not dead?" Because of what I was on and drinking on it. Yes, there's warnings on the boxes, but hey, if you want to drink, you ignore those. And as it didn't seem to have any ill effect on me directly, I kind of ignored the warnings and just carried on.
Yeah. Very, very typical. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing what we can take and not kill ourselves, isn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah, they were just completely baffled that I was still living and breathing, and miraculously not killed myself in the process.
Well, at some point, so what was the turnaround there? So you're on medication for depression. You'd had the stroke, and you're drinking on that. But so what was the realization there? What was sort of the pivotal moment where you said, "Okay, I need to stop doing this and go in a different direction"?
It was the realization that every time I drank, I wanted to kill myself. It was like, hang on, this isn't right. Actually, I do have carers that come and help me around the house and with certain parts of my living. And one of them actually just sort of casually said to me, because we were getting the rubbish ready for collection the next day, and she staggered with my recycling of bottles. And she said, "Do you think you've got a drinking problem?" And I was like, "No, don't be so stupid. I only have a few bottles a night. It could be worse. And I knew someone, a friend of mine, she was in recovery, and I just called her up and said, Caroline, do you think I'm an alcoholic? And she said, I can't answer that question for you. And she said, go onto this website, do the questionnaire and call me back. I did the questionnaire and I've never felt so excited, the fact that I got them all correct.
You always wanted to do well in school, and now you did, right?
Yeah.
I know exactly.
Absolutely.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
And I immediately just had this relief and I was really happy that I was told in black and white, you have high probability that you're an alcoholic. I was like, yay, I've got an answer. So I phoned her back and she said, I will come and collect you tomorrow and take you to a meeting with me. Just the relief of having an answer. I got stuck straight in, and I was very lucky that, yes, I had my days of temptation, but I did treat it like an allergy of not being able to eat nuts for a lot of people, or shellfish. It was like, this stuff's going to kill me. And having 2 young children, and the fact I had survived what I had survived, I was like, this is make or break. So I dug deep, did the work, and I'm now over 3 years without a slip, or, because that's another thing that I think it's becoming all too common, that relapse is a part of recovery. It doesn't have to be part of recovery at all. That is
correct. Yep. It certainly does not have to be. It does not have to be. For many of us, that is the case. But that's a very, very good point there. It does not have to be. But if it is, it's not the end of the world, and you get right back. You get right back to work if you do.
Yep, I take all my medications as prescribed. And I've done a lot of inner work, because I just felt after a certain point that there was just something missing, and that's why I dug a lot deeper with the help of my addiction doctor, and had to come to terms with stuff I'd never even considered a problem, like my childhood. And it turned out that, yes, I had adverse childhood experiences and early childhood trauma. And on further reading, I'm completely astounded by transgenerational trauma. And looking back over family history, all sorts of things are coming out the woodwork. Unfortunately, most of the people now are dead that can answer a lot of the questions, but I find it comforting to know that I'm unraveling as much as possible, for not just my own sake, but my children and other members of the family.
So you said that you walked into a 12-step meeting and you plugged in right away.
I did.
Yeah. So what was that experience like?
It completely made sense. I did feel as though I'd sort of come home.
Yeah. Did you, for those that may be listening to this podcast that have not experienced that, what was your first impression? What was that experience like, just walking in? And did you have reservations? And having gone through the stroke, did you feel like that was going to be a detriment? Just that whole experience. What was that like for you?
Well, I've kind of got used to people sort of looking at me, because I do look fairly young for someone that hobbles around with a walking stick. And because I'm partially paralyzed down one side, I've got enough movement in my hip to sort of balance and use my left leg really as a prop. Majority of it doesn't actually work other than from the hip, but my left arm is very strange. But everyone was very warm, friendly, inviting, and I felt complete and utter relief.
Oh. So the steps, then you ended up, I'm taking it then that you're a proponent of working the 12 steps.
I did, yes. Went through them. I've worked with several sponsees myself and got them through the steps. And where I think I was really lucky, where a lot of people sort of balk, is with the God word. And when I was in rehabilitation hospital to work on my speech and my walking, and they call it rehab, but it's not the rehab as in addiction rehab. Mm-hmm. It's rehab and enabling you just get back on your feet. After my first walking lesson, I was sat on the edge of my bed, and this was out in Italy, and a priest came in to talk to me, and I don't speak Italian, and I'm certainly never been part of the Catholic Church, and I managed to sort of get enough across that I didn't want to speak to him. And yeah, of course, I had a bit of anger and a bit of, how could God do this to me? Yeah. But then I looked out across the gardens and I thought, hang on a minute, but I'm still alive. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a reason for that. And I think now I have totally found my reasoning to survive, to be brought through alcoholic recovery, and the combination of the two to help others.
So that was a big part of your life, reconnecting and finding that purpose in life.
Absolutely. Well, as I said, I lost my marriage. I have my children, which mean the world to me, but I want to make the best of my life, because no matter what, disabled or able-bodied, an addict on the street or an addict in a penthouse apartment, we all deserve to have the best life. So I like to say best lives matter.
Yeah, yeah. That's really what it comes down to. In recovery, what's funny, Helen? I get into this discussion quite a bit with people, and it's a weekly discussion I have with folks. They're just like, Mike, I just don't understand, my life. I'm giving up my drinking or my drugging, and how are you going to have fun? Here in the United States, we just had the Super Bowl this last weekend, so that, as that's like a big event, mm-hmm. a big event here, and people just say like, I can't, how am I going to watch the Super Bowl without drinking? How am I going to, New Year's Eve, what am I going to do? Christmas Eve, what am I going to, Thanksgiving, what am I going to do? And what I tell people is, you're going to enjoy those holidays. For many of us, we don't remember. Back in your drinking days, you probably didn't even remember the Super Bowl. And for some reason, we equate drinking and drugging with fun. And we can't have fun without drinking or drugging. When the reality is that when you get to the point where you're drinking the way that you and I are discussing right now, there's nothing fun about that.
No,
I
there
wasn't
isn't.
drinking at the end for fun. Drinking was, trust me, you didn't want to go to the party that I was going to, and for many others. And that's what I always say to the patients is, if you really think about it, you weren't enjoying yourself. Now, I'm enjoying myself today. I'm living, as you mentioned, Helen, you're living life, and you're living life at its fullest. I wasn't living life at the end. Was that true for you?
Absolutely. I don't think I really lived my life until I had my stroke, if I'm perfectly honest, because it actually made me address so many things, coupled with, because I wouldn't have left my husband, and although our marriage was struggling, there is absolutely no way I would have had that reason to leave if it wasn't for my stroke.
So you ended up working the steps, and in the beginning of your recovery, you work in the steps, and life got better. And it sounds like to you, now I'll just share with you that I know in my particular case, you work the steps, and that gets you on that solid foundation, that solid footing. And then as time goes on, you start to answer the deeper questions that the steps help you uncover. Now, what I mean by that is, and this is just, and I did a whole podcast on this where I talked about the first year working on the physical aspects, the damage that you've done to your body. Then the second year, really looking at the emotional aspects. The third year, the psychological, and then the fourth year, the spiritual aspect, and discovering, what does spirituality mean to you, because it's different for each person. And then the fifth year is you realizing that you have that cycle. And so for many of us, we kind of branch off into other areas and other programs that maybe we hadn't worked before, and start exploring different areas. And for you, I know that was the case. You started, you start looking at your spirituality. You just mentioned that, having that opening, that experience where you looked out across the courtyard and you realized that you were alive, and started thinking about those deeper meanings in life. So that led you to exploring other areas. Where did that take you in that exploration, and after getting that foundation in the 12 steps?
Yeah, well, I am a firm believer in my higher power, who I do choose to call God. My children, they like to think more of the religious side, but that's never been a part of my life. And so we all have our own understandings of God in our house. And no one's right, no one's wrong. And it's just having to know that, there are lots of different gods out there. Just choose one. And it's one that you feel happy with. And certainly I know that not even Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, they're bigger than me, but they're not the biggest force out there.
No. And so as you were working the steps, then you started looking into other areas and other programs as well, and started exploring coaching, correct?
I did. Well, I started as soon as I had even a couple of months in the rooms. I felt a draw to coaching. Now, sponsorship obviously is very different to coaching, but I'm always looking to improve my mind and learn things. So I started initial training, basic training of life coaching, and carried that on, got more and more involved in it. And because I could see that coaching was such an obvious thing to do for me. I used to coach people riding horses. So because I used to actually ride for Great Britain a long time ago as a young rider. So I did coach people and have this natural way of wanting to help people.
So what is the difference between a coach and a sponsor? Because a lot of people may have that question.
Yeah, sponsorship is very much obviously taking you through the steps, and you do form a relationship, but certainly you wouldn't normally give guidance in other aspects of the life and empowering qualities of a person. You're working very much to a structure of guiding the person and advising, whereas a coach, you're very much looking at all aspects of the life that need to be addressed and to get you in the best footing to lead the best life in recovery. So looking at the goals that you're wanting and breaking those down.
That's really interesting. So as a coach, you're going to be getting into more the goals and maybe the personal aspects, maybe even relational aspects. Whereas strictly as a sponsor, you're taking someone through the steps. You're maybe teaching them about the literature in the program, and basically teaching about a specific 12-step program. Whereas as a coach, what I'm hearing from you is that it goes much deeper than that, into lifestyle, goals, careers, aspirations, things like that.
Yes, it's really rebuilding your life as this new person, and it works well alongside a sponsor. So you could be in the fellowship and working the steps. Obviously, I have a knowledge of the steps and the process, but I would not give any advice or get involved in that at all. That's very much the sponsor's role.
Yeah, and that's a question that I always get from people is, which program should I work? And I'm with you. I don't think that there's any problem in incorporating many different aspects to your recovery. The 12 steps, obviously, solid foundation. And oftentimes, I think, in the very beginning, just so there's not a lot of confusion, maybe concentrating on that. Because one of the things, and I'm going to start incorporating this into the discussion here right now. One of the things about the 12-step programs is the insistence upon abstinence from mood-altering drugs. And that's probably the best thing about that is if you've gotten to the point where you end up in a treatment center, if you have health problems, if you your career is falling apart, marriage is falling apart due to your use, abstinence is really where you need to be. That's what I would highly recommend. Some other programs, maybe other programs don't necessarily emphasize that. However, having said that, a lot of the other programs have phenomenal qualities, qualities that can really help you in your recovery. But if you've gotten to the point where you're coming to see me, where I'm at and where I'm working, abstinence really, that's something you really want to consider when you get to the point where I'm talking to you one-on-one. Would you agree with that?
I would, definitely. So it's people that coming out of a treatment facility, and it would just really bed in the work that's been done there and move you to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it does seem that there's, particularly these days, and I can't speak for the United Kingdom, but here in the United States, there's this move towards making use of drugs. And I'll just openly talk about marijuana is one, not the only one, but it's probably the biggest one right now. It's the biggest subject. How that can help you in recovery, and it can help you as a person. There's a big push for that. And I think that is such a dangerous move. And that's such a dangerous thing for people that have ended up in a treatment facility to play around with folks. And if you're listening to me, and if you're listening to Helen right now, I want you to listen. And I don't back down off of this at all. If you've gotten to the point where you need to go to detox or go to a treatment facility and you come out, and if you start playing around with other drugs, you're really, really, doing yourself a disservice, but you're really playing with fire on that. And I would highly encourage you to learn to live life happily, substance free. And as long as you're searching for a way out and searching for a way to not be in your reality, you're going to continue to have problems, and it will continue to get worse. Do you agree with that, Helen?
I totally agree with it. I know many people that have been caught out with it, that they think that they can do, say, smoking marijuana safely, and then it's not long before then, not in all cases, but then they think, well, perhaps I'll be okay with just one beer tonight. And the addiction just takes off again.
It does. It does. It's not going to change. It's not going to change.
And the problems are still going to be there. So if you're trying to escape problems that are going on in your life, there are plenty of other things that you can do to make yourself feel better, because nothing will change by having a smoke or having a beer. You've got to, absolutely be living life on life's terms. And one thing that I firmly believe, that if something is going drastically wrong in my life, it's going to probably lead me to something better.
That's an interesting statement. If something is going drastically wrong in your life, it will lead to something better. Elaborate on that, because that's an interesting statement.
Well, I don't like to constantly go back to my stroke, but yeah, it was absolutely hideous, but it did lead me to a point that made me address so many factors in my life. And I'm now in the best place I've ever been.
Isn't that amazing? How something that you would think that would just be life-shattering is actually turned. And I think the people that aren't in recovery find that to be such a difficult thing to understand. How could something like that, so tragic, turn into being the thing? Like, you didn't just say it was a good thing. You said it was the best thing that could happen to you.
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm a little bit crazy when I say that. But I'm far happier dealing with my hemiplegia than how I was existing before. It's opened my mind to so many aspects of life and what to be really grateful for.
It really puts life in a different perspective.
It does, totally.
And it doesn't have to be a stroke. It can be any number of things.
It could, and certainly my choice to recover from my alcoholism, it made me really address my childhood. I've battled with mental health issues all my life, and it's actually made me open up the truth of who I really am, which for 41 years, I didn't know who I was, but I am now wholeheartedly my absolute truth. And I quite like this person, hated myself. I remember even at 8 years old, I'd go to bed just hating myself, crying myself to sleep because I hated myself so much. I had my first suicidal thoughts at 8. I remember standing in the kitchen one day with a very sharp knife about to slit my wrists. And obviously I didn't. I think the dog threw up on the floor or something that kind of disrupted me.
Well, we are so glad you're here. I mean, and you just sound so happy.
I am happy. And for those that wonder how they can have a good time sober, you will have the best times. And best of all, you will remember it. You won't annoy anyone. You won't wake up thinking, oh, what have I done? And have a flashback of doing something absolutely hideous. Or immediately checking your phone. Who did I text? Who did I call? Who am I going to have to apologize to? Mm-hmm. And you have proper, genuine laughter that comes from your soul.
You really do. You really do. And people don't understand that. And that's why I just laugh at the question. And I don't laugh at the people because I was the same way. But when people say, you know, my life is over. It's over. I can't have fun anymore because I can't drink and drug. I can't do those things. And it is absolutely not true. You know it's not true. I know that it's not true. And it still just bothers me that people are looking for alternate ways to alter the reality. And it's starting to permeate the community. It's starting to permeate the recovery community. In fact, before we came on the recording here, you were telling me about some conversations about ketamine and mushrooms and different things and these are in recovery circles that people are having this conversation. Tell us a little bit about that, and then give us your thoughts on the use of those two substances.
It's something that I find absolutely terrifying. In the UK, we don't even have medical marijuana. Yes, people buy it off the streets and things, but that's wherever you are in the world. But I know in the States it's legal in quite a few counties. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that there are these ketamine clinics. But it's just, to me, like putting a Band-Aid over something and hoping it's going to miraculously just heal.
Yeah, because when you talk about this,
are still going to be there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what. So, for those that say, well, what's wrong with this? If it makes me feel better, why? Because I have had people say, Mike, I don't understand. If this makes me feel better, if I think that this is helping my recovery, why would you not support it? So, if I came to you and said that to you, what would your response to that be?
I would like to know what else you have tried to make yourself feel better, because there are other ways. And look at other tools that you could be equipped with, other things that could make you feel better about yourself. I've had to personally do a lot of work on my self-esteem, self-love, and Dear Gratitude. I wrote a book on it. I know it's sort of always a bit of a joke. Oh, I could talk about that all day. I could almost write a book on it. Well, I actually did.
Yeah. And that's a book. You said it's a book on self-esteem?
On gratitude.
Oh, on gratitude. Yeah. And that is so true. You know, being grateful for things. You know, I know that for me, that gratitude, and I know that the patients that I work with, we always talk about that. You know, what are you, it's easy to talk about the things that you're angry about in your life, but what are the things that you're grateful for? And people will say, well, I'm not grateful for anything. Well, hold on. I know for me, one of the things I'm grateful for is all the things that could have happened didn't. You know, they didn't. You know, I never got a DUI, never got arrested, never lost a job, never, you know, all those different things that could happen and do happen to many people. But even if you are in that category where you've lost a job, lost a marriage, or maybe got arrested, maybe you could have been arrested more times than you were. Maybe you could have lost more jobs, or you know, the list goes on and on and on. The fact is that by the time people get into recovery, whatever situation they have could have been much worse than it was. But there's a lot of other things to be grateful for. How about this? You're grateful for being sober today, when you and I both know, Helen, that for every person that is sober, there's probably 1,000 or more that need to be in the place where that sober person is, and being grateful for the fact that you, for whatever reason, you are one of those people that got sober, because many, if not most, won't ever get it.
Totally. And every day you hear of another person that falls to this awful disease.
Yeah. It's amazing. You know, I'm reminded, and it's an age-old problem that we haven't solved. Bill Wilson, as you know, is one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Bill Wilson, in one of the writings that I read, and I don't remember which book it was, but you know, Bill Wilson had been he served in the U.S. Army during the First World War. And I guess it was sort of a premonition to come. He had been shipped over to England, getting ready to go, you know, over into the fight in World War I. And for some reason, he was either passing by a graveyard or was in a graveyard in England.
Winchester Cathedral.
What's that?
Winchester Cathedral.
Oh, so you know the story about how he was reading a gravestone.
Yeah.
And it was somebody, I think from the 1700s, and I think it was someone in the British Army, and they actually had on the headstone that he died from alcohol. Are you familiar with that story?
Yeah, and that story is from the Big Book.
Yeah. Oh, it was in the Big Book. Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting. Kind of a premonition of things to come for Bill Wilson, huh?
Yeah, but we've also got to remember that life in general has progressed since the 1930s dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
And with that, recovery has had to change. I'm sure he would be delighted the way that, and this is something that has helped a lot of disabled people, is the use of Zoom in recovery.
Yep.
So for those that can't get out the house easily.
That's one of the things that I was very skeptical of, you know, and of course COVID, you know, this podcast that you and I are doing right now, you know, 100 years from now, if somebody stumbles across this and they're listening to this podcast and they're going to say Zoom, you know, video meetings, of course. You know, you have to understand that just in the last 2 years, this is 2022, and it's just in the last year or so that Zoom has taken off. I had never heard of Zoom prior to COVID occurring, and I was very, very leery about it. And there are some aspects of it that I'm not thrilled with, and that's another podcast for another day. I'll cover what the downsides of it are, but there's a lot of plus sides, and one of them is that you know, you can if you're in a situation where you're maybe through your disability, injury, or whatever, you can't make it to a meeting, hey, you can, because you have Zoom. You can attend meetings all over the world, not just the United States, although I do that.
And 24/7.
24/7, yeah. Hey, I've been to meetings in England. There's a meeting in Manchester that I go to occasionally. Kind of difficult because of the time change, but I've been to the meetings there. Been meetings to all over England, actually. Other countries, the fact that you and I talk to one another. I go to specialty meetings. I go to meetings specifically for police officers, and these are police officers from all over the United States. That's in Canada, actually. We have some that come in. That would have never been possible prior to COVID and Zoom coming along. And so,
no,
yeah, it's a big change.
AA online before was very much just messages. It wasn't even as quick as instant messaging.
Yeah, that was odd.
Really, yeah.
That was odd because you're typing, instead of talking, you're typing whatever it is that you're saying into it, and then then you would type something, and then everybody would respond to it. It was just very awkward, in how that was. I understand that people were trying, but it was just it wasn't for me. That was not for me.
Well, I think this is a massive step up for it.
Absolutely is.
And I do hope it does continue.
Well, Helen, so with your coaching, tell us a little bit, you can close this out with, tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now and why you're doing it. And, if people want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
They can contact me. Now, my website is under reconstruction at the moment, but my email address is helen@helenbrattonrecovery.coach. And I'm always happy to hear from people and happy to chat, arrange a free half-hour introduction session to see how I could help you within your recovery quest. And let's see how we can make your life even better.
Absolutely. And for anyone out there that's listening that has gone through what Helen's going through in particular, I mean, anybody, but if you have suffered a stroke and you need someone to talk to about life after a stroke and being the best you and having the best life, Helen would be a great resource. I would really recommend.
Any disability.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a lady with MS, for example, and I wished I knew then what I know now, that I could have helped her have a much happier existence than she did lastly.
Oh, well, Helen, thank you so much for joining us today. A very interesting conversation, and really moving into areas that I've not discussed on this program until this time. And I want to have you back. Could you come back and join us in the future?
I would love to come back and speak to you further.
Oh, well, really, really enjoy you being here today, and a lot of really, really good information. And if you're in the United States and you've not attended a Zoom meeting in England, it's always kind of, I always enjoy it because, here in America, we think, over in the United Kingdom, they speak the same language we do. So everything is the same, which is absolutely not true. It's very, very different cultures, different ways of doing things. But what is so neat is when I attend Zoom meetings, recovery Zoom meetings in England, I just love it because it's so similar. Those meetings are similar, but the way people talk, the way that that's when I start to realize, there are differences in the culture, and it's just always fascinating to me to hear those differences, but then plug it through the prism of a 12-step meeting, and so there's differences, but yet there's so many similarities at the same time, and it's a lot of fun. So if you have not done that, I would highly recommend that you do, and because the meetings are everywhere.
Do you know where I go?
No.
I go to New Jersey on a regular basis.
New Jersey?
I do.
Wow. How did you end up in a New Jersey meeting?
My sponsor's home meeting.
Really? Oh, is she in New Jersey?
She is.
Wow. Well, I have a few other meetings too that I'd like to hook up you with. But this is how we network. This is how we network in this community. Yeah.
Definitely.
And then if you go to, you come to the United States, you have people that you know, at least online. And and those of you in the United States, if you go to Europe, hey, you have somebody that you can contact while you're there. It's great.
Yeah, well, we're one big happy family, really.
We are.
Well, we are happy now.
We were an unhappy, dysfunctional family before, but we're a happy family now.
Well, my blood family, unfortunately, there is quite a lot of dysfunction there, and there has been for many generations.
Well, we are here now, and we are so happy that you're here. And, and Helen and I are just examples of how your life can get better. And as I always like to say, it can't not get better. It just can't. You stop using, it's going to get better no matter. Not all of your problems are going to go away, but a heck of a lot of them are.
No, and you'll have other new ones, but you'll be able to tackle them with confidence and passion.
That's absolutely true. Well, thanks again, Helen. We really appreciate it.
All righty.
All right. Well, folks, this episode has been sponsored by FHE Health, and according to SAMHSA, first responders are 30% more likely to develop behavioral health conditions like PTSD. FHE Health specializes in getting first responders better and cleared for duty, so find out more at fhehealth.com. So, folks, as I'd like to say, I don't represent any group, although we do talk about groups, as you can see on here. We don't represent them. We just talk about the groups that are out there, and want you to get involved in any group that will help you get sober, because that's the ultimate goal. So you find your path, work it. We're just giving our opinions, our experiences, and just letting you know what we did. So if I've said anything that does not apply to you, or if Helen said something that doesn't apply to you and you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself and use that to help others as well, because that's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we help to impart the knowledge we've gained to others as well. So with that, please visit our Facebook page, which is Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Let me know how I'm doing, and let me know if there's a topic that you'd like to hear about, because I'd love to hear from you. So you guys take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.